until I finish. Got till right there. We're just going to continue on with the trees today. And it's going to be a lot similar to yesterday. So if you were here yesterday, get ready for more of that. I feel a little better today than yesterday. I sound a little better. Getting over a cold. But the genius that I am, I decided, hey, let's go live every day while we're getting better from being sick. So let's get into this. I'm just going to start working on these trees right here. Continuing it down. I'll start out a little wider so people can get a little perspective on what I'm working on. And then later I'll zoom in a little bit tighter. Well, let me see what this little button does. Retouch. Okay. Okay, let's see. Let's get into it. So similar to yesterday, starting off with my lightest value, my 2B pencil. I'm just gonna work in these lightest values here. And then I'll go over the top of it. I do a little 1 by 1 inch square every day. That's what I'm going for on this current plan of going live every day until I finish this drawing. So just gonna get into it, get into a nice rhythm. If anybody has any questions, fire them off. Or if you just want to let me know what you're working on drawing or what you need help with drawing, feel free to comment. Let me know. I'm curious to know what people are working on these days. Of course, we're just gonna, from our previous work, continue these down as well. We want to make sure we keep everything working together and looking realistic. Keep this illusion going on our drawing here. It's being really small and deliberate with my marks throughout. If you want to check out a step-by-step tutorial on this process, my drawing video, how to draw a forest, goes over it step by step. And I've done a bunch of lives on these now. But to finish off this drawing here, I got quite a large section of the trees to go. Let's see. So I got to finish off this section of the trees. So plenty more in-person live demos here. Just doing tiny little marks in the direction of our branches going left to right. You don't have to be too precise at this point. Any of this is going to get covered up with our next values as we get darker. It's best to draw outside, beyond what the actual size of your trees are, because as we get darker, we can shrink them into the correct size. It's easier to overlap with the darker values, obviously. So I'm just going to stretch these out just a little bit, but you want to keep your marks pretty small still. It definitely starts out looking just like scribbles, and then as we hone in, the trees really take shape. So yeah, that looks like nothing, but as we get darker here, each layer is going to start developing that texture and contrast that we want of our fir trees, our evergreen trees here. So this is a HB pencil. Just gonna get a little more. Just doing that same process. A little more exact as we go. Just layering in these details. I'm just kind of essentially scribbling a tree here, lifting up my pencil a lot to build those branches and that texture. I'm not going up and down, I'm only going left to right. And these branches, this is my reference image, you can see the branches slightly, here we go. They slightly kind of are V shape. So that's what I'm going for. They're not all quite with an upward angle like that, but just doing it where I see it on my reference image. And on the forest here, I don't mind if I'm a little bit off in my drawing and all those details, but up on the mountain, I want to get as accurate as possible. This is a drawing of Mount Rainier that I, based off a photo I took at the Reflection Lakes area of the park. It's a very well-known spot. I'll zoom out here, give everybody a look. If you're not familiar, there's the full drawing. Here's what we got to finish off here. So you can get a good sense of this process. It's super tedious and you need a lot of patience, but you pull off this incredible detail if you stick to it. This is what we're just doing here today. Some bigger trees in the front here. So the tree, I'm trying to match my photo, 70% in terms of detail on the trees here. On the mountain, I want that to be as accurate as I can get because so many people know well-known spots on the mountain. You can see the mountain's a lot more difficult, even though it looks like it might not be, but this little stretch here I've almost been avoiding because it takes so long to accomplish a small little chunk. And these trees, you can get into a nice rhythm and knock them out relatively easily, although they do take, yesterday on my live, it took about 40 minutes, I think, to finish one of these squares. But once I get into a rhythm, I can do it a little faster. I just haven't worked on this drawing consistently. And that's part of this reason why I want to go live every day till I finish, because I've been spending a lot of time focusing on my tutorials, and this way I can finish this drawing and hopefully get onto some new long-term projects and also share those with you, share those with everybody on the page. So that's the goal. Oops, I suppose I should make sure I'm on here. That's the short-term goal. Finish this, work on some new stuff, maybe these lives, I'm sure people on the lives are ready to see more than just these trees that I've been drawing for quite a while. Yeah, if you have any questions or if there's something you're working on, you're curious about some advice on for nature, wildlife, landscape drawings, drop a comment. Or if there's a tutorial you want to see, particular again on landscapes or wildlife, let me know. But I think for realistic drawing in particular, being patient is kind of like number one asset you could have to getting better. Not only allowing yourself to learn without getting upset or frustrated, but also if you're doing realistic drawing and you're saying, oh, I want to draw this, and you think you're going to draw it in a few hours or in a couple sessions of drawing, that's not really the best way to approach realistic drawing. Realistic drawing, you got to allow yourself the time to get into all those details. Dragon Warrior, thumbs up. Thanks for tuning into the live. Thanks for the compliment. Yeah, you got to be patient with yourself and allow yourself the time in realistic drawing to get into all those details. If you're just trying to get to the end of the drawing, it's a lot harder to dial in everything and focus. So this HB, then we're going to go to a 2B pencil, and that's when we can really start to hone in the shape and pull these trees together. It's also where I fill in all these white areas. I like to leave that to the end, obviously, because that's with the darkest value that I use on these trees. You could always use, again, I'm using a 2H, HB, and a 2B pencil. If you wanted a darker drawing, you could just shift that to whatever, series you want to use. But for me, I needed to use, due to the scale on this, I needed to use mechanical pencils. Otherwise, I'd just be sharpening them constantly. And that's what I had available. How long have you been working on this? Let's see. It's been over a year. I think it's been about 16 months, but a lot of that time I have been focusing on making my YouTube tutorials. So it's been on the back burner quite a bit. So this way, doing it on the lives, I can make progress on this. I can see, what connect with everybody watching and what you're working on, what you need help with. And also, if people have questions on this, on my process here, I can elaborate more. I've gotten some comments recently about going a little slower on some of my tutorials, and these lives are a great way to do that because there's no editing. It's super cool. Thank you. Okay, so now it really just looks like scribbles, these first few steps. And now with the 2B pencil here, this is where I'm going to really add in all, so I'm working on this, just when I'm sort of, again, I'm not trying to match it directly, but that's what I'm using as inspiration. And now I can fill it in with this to be all these final details. We just pop out and show everybody what we're working on here. So this is Mount Rainier at the Reflection Lakes area. This is a lake down here, and then we have a forest of trees, and then Mount Rainier. This is a very popular photo spot, hiking spot at Mount Rainier National Park. And this is based off a drawing I took a couple years ago, or based off a photo I took a couple years ago. All right, so let's start filling in these shadows and really make these trees pop. So you just want to make, you want to keep your... Now I'm motivated again. Nice. What are you working on any drawings, Dragon Warrior? Or are you just looking for some inspo to get started up again? You want to keep your marks, right now I'm just doing little dots almost. Just trying to, obviously match the scale of these little branches. If I were to make big lines, it's going to throw off the realism. And even in these shadowy dark areas, I'm just doing little dots and marks. I'm not sitting there with my pencil on the paper the whole time, scribbling. Just sort of carving in these trees. Yes, I do charcoal style, abstract, and sci-fi. Cool. I've dabbled with charcoal. I'd like to get more into it. You just get really dirty doing it, and I don't really have a good sort of studio space to do it. But it's fun. It's fun how fast you can develop sort of textures with charcoal. I always work too fast. Yeah, I think that's a common problem. I do that as well sometimes. You're just anxious to see, not even, for me, it's not even like I'm anxious to see the end of the drawing, it's just to see progress. So you really gotta force yourself to slow down. That's kind of why, I have the grids here partially so I can keep the scale in particular up on the mountain. But it's also, so I normally allow kind of just in general about 1 hour per each of these little squares. And that is a good way to force myself not to rush, because every day I just have a square as a goal. Whereas if it was just an open sheet of paper, it's harder to decipher like how much I want to set as my goal for the day. But just having these 1 inch by 1 inch squares already drawn out, I know that that's an achievable amount for the quality that I want to go for. But everybody draws different and works different, so whatever works for you. But really, this, in the end, is just sort of controlled scribbling. And then it has the cumulative effect of just building that incredible texture and also realism when we push out here. I like to pop out kind of often because I know people come in and leave and I get new viewers. You can see all these branches here, all these branches. It'll take so much time to develop. Some of the light is really getting me. Let me see what happens when I turn this off. But yeah, just slow and steady. But just scribbling. Just scribbling is all I'm doing. Still always going in the direction of the branches, sort of up and to the left, up and to the right. Just little dots. You know, the interior of a tree. It's a little hard to tell off this drawing, or off this photo, but you can see the interior where all those branches come together. There's going to be more shadows and darker values. So just focusing a little bit more in there with my 2B pencil here. And if we go too dark, which I'll end up doing in the end, we can use our eraser. I'll show you which one I use. We want to mimic the same sort of marks that we're doing with our pencil, with our eraser. So everything looks in line and in unison. If I were to come through with an eraser and take this whole thing out, or, you know, a big chunk out, it's gonna, we're gonna lose a lot of the work and all the effort we just put into building all this texture with these tiny little marks. And even in these shadowy areas, it's probably might be a little hard to tell. There's a slight variation in contrast here. And I need to fill in a little bit more. But, you know, even, this isn't a really good printout, but your human eye, you know, your eyes are going to pick up all these details in those shadows of the forest with the trees, you know, sort of back in those shadows. There are still trees in there. And so I like to even not fill in these entirely. So you get a hint of just those sort of shadowy details, even though they aren't present in my pretty crappy printout here. But I think sometimes, especially like maybe when I was just beginning drawing, I would make a real concerted effort to shade this in as dark as I can and even as I can. But I like having a little texture in there. It's one of the skills, I think, when you're working on drawing, working on how you see things out in nature can be so beneficial. You know, because a lot of how you draw is how you interpret how you see. And I spend a lot of time out hiking and such. So I'm always working on how I view and interpret scenes when I'm out either taking photos or just hiking alone. Trying to recognize textures and patterns in trees and the like. So if you don't have time to practice drawing, you can always practice your seeing and observing skills and how things function in nature and how would you draw that then? Which that whole idea is why I have a couple of videos called Drawn to Adventure. I'm working on a few more. And that essentially is exploring that exact idea of going on hikes and working on my skills of interpreting scenes out, drawing in nature, drawing in the outdoors and trying to, you know, hike to some epic spots in the mountains and breaking out the sketchbook. I have 2 episodes up if you want to check those out. They're called Drawn to Adventure. And I recorded the 3rd one, but I haven't edited it yet. So here there are 2, this is what I'm working on right here. There are these 2 long trees that kind of continue all the way down. So I'm just building a little texture in between with some darker values, and then I'm going to have just kind of some shadows separating the 2 I'll work on in a second. You just want to avoid, you don't want anything to feel like it's too much of a pattern. Nature is random. Periodically with the 2B pencil also, I'm adding a little bit more pressure to get it a little darker. Just to sort of, because this is my third valued layer here I'm working with. That way you can just stretch it a little bit more. Okay, so now in between, I'm just going to add this shadowy bit right here to give these trees a little separation. Again, I want to be really random. They don't even have to, my shadows here don't have to connect all the way down. Sometimes those trees are going to run into each other. And as I was saying yesterday on the live, on the outskirts of these trees, like up here, it's really definitive. You can tell you can tell these are trees. Whereas you get down into the middle, it kind of turns more into little blobs. And so, when you're a kid and you're always drawing like a perfect triangle tree, you want to make sure you don't just draw that every time. Otherwise, it's not going to look natural. And when you get into these middle areas, all the work you put on the edges of making really well-defined trees are going to help you so much, because in here, as it turns into just these blobs, people's brains fill in that information. And so their brains are telling them, this is a forest, or these are all trees, even though, again, this kind of looks like a lot of just scribbles. But in the context of seeing everything, it pulls off that illusion of the drawing. Hopefully that made sense. Kind of a long way of saying, if you do make sure to make all of your really well-defined trees on the edges really shine. That's kind of the most important work. Although you really can see all the tops of the trees here. That's obviously important, but here it just kind of turns into a mess of branches coming into each other. Just gonna add some little extra finesse on some of these darker shadows, darker values here. Starting to come together. So here's, I'm going to do a little erasing. So I have one of these erasers. I cleaned it off on some scratch paper, or sandpaper, which also sharpens it. But I just want to widen this tree out here just a little bit. So I'm mimicking kind of what I did with my pencil, just doing little dabs to widen the bottom of this out. Got a little too skinny. Let me go back in with our 2B, just to add a little shadow. You gotta be super subtle though. You don't want to, again, erase all the texture we just built. It's a little shadowy down here, so just fixing that up. There's just a little hint of a tree that comes in down here. I like to sometimes really just focus in on these little details. And then this tree kind of disappears a little bit. Okay, so one other thing I really like to work on, you can see, it's here, right here, you can see just a slight hint of the tree trunk. And I kind of missed that here it's on these two trees right here. So for that, I'm gonna take my electric eraser. You gotta be real careful here. This is a new one. But I'm just going to try to erase as thinly as possible. Two little sections, and we're gonna carve in. There you go, so you should see it right there and right there. We're gonna try to carve in those trunks, and then we'll go in and add a little texture over the top to blend it together. So that's pretty good. We'll start out a little more subtle with the HB. Now we're just gonna sort of work that in there. Get a little tree trunk. Little hints, like little details like that. It's gonna help really pull off the effect of your forest. I have some more of these. I'll show you ones that I already have done and I think work well. So like here are some, and maybe gotta turn this light off again. Maybe I need the light on. But there's one right there, there's one right there. Just those little tiny details that really pull off the realism. So, again, some right there. Some branches. Here's one. You know, maybe people don't notice it, but it's just a little nice detail to help everything come together. Be careful not to erase them in and then cover them all the way back up, which I'm on the verge of doing, so I'm going to leave that one as is. This one is quite a bit smaller, so I'll just add a few more little taps in here. Tiny little detail. A lot of work for something so small, but again, when people really dig in and start looking through getting up close to your drawing, it's a cool little thing to have. So I'm just about wrapping up. Just doing a little finessing here. And then that'll be it for today, and on to day 3 tomorrow, which will be more trees. So if you want to watch this process again, we'll be working on the next section of them, the next 1x1 inch square. And if you have any questions or want to see a tutorial on something, you can pretty much comment anywhere on any of my videos and I'll see it. I always do this where I say I'm just about wrapping up and then I see some stuff I want to tidy up. But that's what realistic drawing, that's kind of the process. Okay. No, a little bit more. Again, this is a piece of sandpaper I clean off. My eraser's not erasing, so I try to sharpen the tip with this. Just little dabs. So that you can see, I mean, I don't know if those trees continue down my printout ends, but these are just sort of the tops of some new trees coming down right here. Okay. I think that's pretty okay. Here's what we did today. This little 1x1 inch square. Just a bunch of scribbles. Then when you pull out, all those scribbles turn in to this forest. Tune in tomorrow and you can see some more trees being drawn. Or if I'm feeling a little more over this cold, I might continue up on the mountain up here, depending on how much time I have. But thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.